Brian Windhorst from the worldwide leader in sports joining us here on the program. How have you been, Brian Windhorst?
Hey, Rich, I know not all of your audience heard it, but you making references to Seinfeld and
Yes.
I'm going to get you, sucker,
Yes.
is so reassuring to me because I'm in my 40s now. I'm when I was a kid, when they said men of a certain age, I'm now a man of a certain age. And I'd like to thank you for doing that because I feel like when I talk about Seinfeld that I lose some of my audience now. They don't know. So I'm happy that you and I can connect on this level. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Because the two of us together, we're real and spectacular, Brian. You know.
Thank you, sir.
So let's get right into it. What is LeBron talking about? How about that as just a grand entrance on this? Because there was a lot about LeBron in Cleveland and feeling nostalgic and wanting to play with his son whenever Bronny is available to hit the NBA, and we don't know if that's with the Lakers. I mean, I'll give you the floor on what you think was on LeBron James's mind this weekend. Brian.
Yeah, it was a tough couple of weeks to be a Laker because nothing at the trade deadline, although I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think that there was a deal there that they could have made that would have made a material difference. But LeBron had come out and been clear he expected/wanted a move at the deadline, and they didn't make one. Then Rob Pelinka, and I mean, I haven't spoken to Rob about this. My guess is he didn't intend to do this, but when he came out after the trade deadline, on deadline day, he basically alluded that LeBron was on the same page as him with not doing anything. And as somebody who occasionally in the last 20 years has incorrectly implied that LeBron felt something and felt the fiery wrath of LeBron's disapproval of that position, LeBron has made him pay for that ever since. And then Anthony Davis goes down with a injury to his foot that is pretty much the wrecking ball to the last vestiges of this Lakers season. Now you've got LeBron in Cleveland going on a passive-aggressive attack, firing at the front office, firing at ownership, hinting about his future. I really think part of it is he's punishing them for the inaction at the trade deadline, and part of it is him sending the message, I would not do that again this summer. You better make some changes.
But isn't the roster as it currently stands something put together with the input, if not full faith and credit of LeBron James, the blue check mark, if you will, from at King James with whatever the roster is put together, Westbrook and Carmelo, isn't this LeBron essentially putting it together?
Yes, Rich, and that's what I think most rational people say. But what you have to understand is LeBron doesn't care. Yes, he put it together, and now he wants to take it apart. And he's done that before. He put the roster, he was a large influence in the way the roster was put together his first year in L.A., and that roster didn't get it done, and he helped rip it to shreds. And now he's prepared to do it again. And I think the Lakers are sitting there going, but LeBron, in all of this roster changeover, we've traded everything and spent all this money, and now you're talking about trading picks, 6 years into the future, 5-6 years into the future, when you're going to be long gone, and LeBron doesn't care. I mean, that's just the reality of it. When he was in Cleveland, he, at the end of his tenure there, 4 years in, which is where he is with the Lakers now, he locked horns with Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert ended up trading 7 first-round picks while LeBron was there. And at the end, he was tired of trading them. And LeBron ended up forcing him into it because he's so good, and the chances of him giving you a chance to win the title are so, rare and so valuable that it usually gets done. And so basically I know that there are people who are trying to extrapolate from everything that he's doing and saying that he wants to leave Los Angeles. From what I understand, that's not the case. He just wants them to go and push all of the chips into the middle, and that means even if it takes all the draft picks you've got left to trade, even if it takes ripping this team apart, he wants them to do it. And so they didn't do it at the deadline, so now he is putting them on notice. You better do it this summer. And if they don't do it this summer, it's worth pointing out that he has 1 year left on his contract. But we're not at that point yet. I don't think this is about that. You mentioned his son.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Rich, he absolutely would love the idea. One of his father figures at Nike is a man named Lynn Merritt. 99% of the basketball world doesn't know who Lynn Merritt is, but Lynn Merritt is a kingmaker at Nike. He's the guy who goes and finds the teenagers and says, you get a $50 million Nike contract, or you get a $10 million Nike contract, or in the case of LeBron, you get a $100 million Nike contract. And this Lynn has been sitting at the side of LeBron for the last 20 years. And, Lynn is, for example, you'll notice that over the last decade or so, LeBron has become extremely interested in the legacy of Muhammad Ali. He's made documentaries. He's sort of fashioned some of his off-court, life around doing some of the same stuff Muhammad Ali did. Lynn Merritt is from Louisville, grew up in the next town over from Muhammad Ali, and regards Muhammad Ali as his icon. What does that have to do with LeBron's son? Well, Lynn Merritt's other major star that he shepherded through Nike was Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. and LeBron had a relationship when he was first coming to Nike, and LeBron treasured the idea that Ken Griffey Jr. played with his father, and it's still an iconic thing in baseball that they played on the same team. So I think it was one season with the Mariners, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, LeBron loves the idea of playing with Bronny, and it's something he's thought about for a long time. And it's something that I'm sure that Lynn has described, and even Ken Griffey himself has described to LeBron. But Bronny is 17. He will not be eligible for the NBA for 2 more years, and I don't even know if he's going to be ready in 2 years. He's regarded as a 4-star prospect. He will definitely get the chance to do whatever he wants for that 1 year in college. But I don't know if he's going to be ready for the NBA. What LeBron is doing right now is not related to Bronny. He's got 2 more seasons to play. That's a lot of basketball between now and then.
Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. In terms of what you just mentioned, let's parse it out. What you just mentioned about LeBron's summer plans and how the Lakers, he's expecting maneuvers to be made. Is it too cynical to ask? How about that for a wind-up? Is it too cynical to ask which Rich Paul clients he's interested in for the Lakers to go get?
No, not necessarily.
Okay,
I mean,
so what is it? What is he thinking? He's smart enough and savvy enough to be further down the road and looking at the chessboard. What are these potential maneuvers look like?
Well,
that he has
I don't want to say something here that will then be used against me later.
Okay,
but let me just say that in a vacuum, is it a good idea for a player and his agency to be given so much influence and power with a team? In a vacuum, you would say no, that there is a separation of that for a reason. Old school people, like, for example, when he was in Miami with Pat Riley would have never allowed anything like this, okay? But whatever you want to think about Rich Paul and the Lakers, without Rich Paul, the Lakers would not have a championship. I mean, he should have been absolutely given one of the real diamond rings. You know, when teams give out their rings, they give out, the real diamonds to the players, and then they say, "Oh, we gave them to our support staff, our scorers table, our public relations folks, our ushers." Those people aren't getting the same. Rich deserved a real diamond ring when the Lakers won, and the reason is because it was Rich Paul that brought Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the Lakers. It was Rich Paul that basically, forced Anthony Davis to the Lakers. He was whacking off, knocking away interest from all these other teams, doing these interviews, telling these other teams, don't trade for Anthony Davis. He's only going to be a Laker. He practically flew the plane to get Anthony Davis from the Pelicans to the Lakers. Without Rich Paul and LeBron working in concert, the Lakers don't get that title. Okay?
No, and my question, just so I make sure everyone knows as well, is I'm not at all broadsiding Rich Paul or Clutch Sports or what. It's clearly he's got a group of talent that can win you a championship, and clearly LeBron. That's why I said is this one of those maneuvers where LeBron will take anybody, but clearly he might have a preference for a Clutch Sports Rich Paul client? And does this give you an indication as to who he thinks and what moves he thinks can be made come July to make his final year in Los Angeles, if not two, championship ones? Like
I don't think it has to be a Clutch clients. I do think there has to be change.
So then what does he think? Then what does he have in mind? What do you think?
Well, here's what I think. I think if there's trades out there to trade the 2027 and 2029 first-round picks, he doesn't care. He wants them traded. And, Jeannie Buss, she's the steward of the franchise.
Right.
She's the person who has to say, listen, we got to be careful giving away a draft pick 6 years from now when LeBron will be, owning, a baseball team or an NBA team. We can't, and it's LeBron pushing back and saying, trade Russell Westbrook, trade this guy, trade that guy, trade the draft picks. I don't care. Do what the Rams did. Trade all the picks. Who cares? That's what LeBron wants.
And I guess, is there any one specific player in mind that he thinks he can be hooked up with? Like, who's the third person in? Like, the third person in was his idea was Westbrook, maybe a little bit of Carmelo. Clearly that's not working out right now. It doesn't appear like it will ultimately this year.
We don't know yet.
Okay.
I mean, I could say some names and then be blasted up on aggregation sites, but
yes, do it.
We don't really.
Yeah.
We don't really know yet. We just have to see. What I can tell you is the Lakers not doing anything at the trade deadline was not what he wanted to see. I told this story in what I wrote yesterday. It was on ESPN. In 2018, midway through the year, LeBron was really frustrated with the Cavs. They had traded Kyrie Irving when he had demanded a trade the year before, and they just weren't very good. And he basically took his foot off the gas. And he went from playing like an MVP-level player to just sort of being an all-star player. And the Cavs started taking losses. And, the front office was kind of pacing back and forth, like, what are we supposed to do here? He's a free agent. He won't extend his contract with us. How do we trade more stuff when we don't even think he's going to be here? And LeBron was just playing worse and worse. So finally at the trade deadline, the night before the deadline, they agreed they were going to do 3 deals that were going to bring 4 role players. Rich, I could let you guess for the next 10 minutes. I'll bet you couldn't even remember who they traded for, okay?
Right.
But that night, they told LeBron before the game, hey, we're going to trade all these guys. And LeBron went out and had 37, 15, and 10, hit a buzzer beater, was completely engaged, and was so happy. And the executives realized, the Cavs executives were looking at each other, and they realized, we just traded for LeBron. I mean, yeah, we're getting 4 role players. We're swapping out some guys. We'll get a little bit better. We just traded for a more engaged LeBron. And so what the Lakers, I think, are going to have to come to terms with is this summer they may have to trade for LeBron to make sure that he remains engaged, especially because if they don't, he has 1 year left on his contract. He's allowed to extend this offseason. In August is the date when he's allowed to start extending. They have to start thinking about making sure that he's fully invested. He got reinvested in 2018, had a great postseason run, one of the great postseason runs of his career, and left in free agency. And the Cavs got a trip to the finals out of it. And so that's the deal you make. And if you've done your research, and I assume the Lakers did, and if they didn't, I can't help them. You should have known when you sign up to play with LeBron, this is what you sign up for. You sign up to completely exhaust your entire franchise to try to make him win for the time that he is there.
Brian Windhorst here on the Rich Eisen Show. A few minutes left with you, and I want to spend that on Ben Simmons. When do we see him play in Brooklyn for the Nets? What do you got?
My colleague, Ramona Shelburne, who has done terrific reporting with inside information on Ben Simmons for months, said yesterday it's a matter of weeks, not months. And I staggered when she said that because Saturday night I'm going to the Bucks-Nets game. It's our ABC game on Saturday night, and I was thinking maybe Ben would be back for that game. I guess not. And Ramona didn't just say that flippantly. She knows. And so my thing is I am going to circle March 10th. March 10th is when the Nets play their final scheduled game of the season at the Sixers. And as far as I know, Ben is not injured. He's been dealing with some mental health challenges, and so that is not something you put a schedule on. So I don't know. To me, it's fascinating about whether he plays before March 10th or not.
So it would be that's the conundrum with this whole conversation, Brian. I'll just walk through the front door with you. Is this the conversation? Was mental health the issue before the shots weren't taken in the playoffs? Were they made worse by the reaction to what happened in Philadelphia? Is it something that caused him to not go to the Olympics and work on his game like you suggested on this very program? Was it the cause of him not showing up to Philadelphia ready to play? Or was this all something that was put out there to make everybody back off Ben Simmons' desire to not play for Philadelphia? And now we're wondering what's going on with the Nets. And I don't know what to make of it. And I know it's a very touchy subject and very unfair potentially to Simmons or to anyone else who does have mental problems. I don't know what to make of it, Brian.
The reason that is causing an issue with credibility is because of the way that it came out. If Ben had identified that as a reason why he was not joining the Sixers from the start of the season, then I think it would have been understood a little bit better. The issue came when he reported to the 76ers, and after holding out, trying to get traded throughout training camp, and he started getting fines, started racking up, and then he reported, and then it came out that that's what it was. Had that been handled in a different order, I think it would have been perceived differently. And so, of course, you have to respect what he's going through. I can't relate to it, so I have to yield. But, in terms of I know that it sounds very coarse to talk about the public relations
right.
of announcing an issue with mental health challenges, but the public relations of it made this more difficult from a PR standpoint.
But we will see Harden this week, correct? This is when we're going to see him first up, right?
I believe so, but I have to say we're in a new NBA that I'm still grappling with, where Harden announces that his hamstring is fine, but that he's not going to play for a while, including in the All-Star. So I don't, the credibility of him and his injuries and speaking about his injuries to me is shot. So I guess is my answer.
And so championship or bust in Philadelphia for Harden, right? This year or however long he stays? Is that fair?
This is why I thought they had to make the trade. I believe he's 33. Joel Embiid is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
He is just killing the league. And, if you watch the All-Star game, in the fourth quarter, the All-Star game is now one of the most competitive things that you see. It's one of the strangest things. The first three quarters are an absolute joke. But now the fourth quarter, with the way they've made it, it's a referendum on a who's who of the NBA. To me, the greatest compliment you can kind of give a player in the regular season is that he's out there on the court in the fourth quarter of the All-Star game. And, it was kind of fascinating to go back and see who they wanted on the court and who wasn't on the court, okay?
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago when they first did this, Joel Embiid was the best player on the court in that game in Chicago. His team ended up not winning. He was the best player on the court. On Sunday night, you see who was making the plays in the fourth quarter. It was Embiid, who's probably going to win the MVP. It was Giannis, the two-time MVP and the reigning champ. It was LeBron. It was like this is when the big boys make their statements. Embiid was awesome in that game, and so this is Embiid's time. And so to import a player like Harden, the Sixers had to do it now. They had to do it now because You don't know how long James Harden is going to be at this level. You don't know when Joel Embiid is going to be at this, healthy at this level. Even if you waited until the summer, you would have missed a chance at biting the apple this time. So the Sixers, to my mind, are let's watch them. They're almost the most compelling story in the NBA after the break. Right before the break, the last game, Thursday night, they go into Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got all their star players. Philly wins in Milwaukee without Harden coming back. Embiid puts up 42. Philly, to me, is the most compelling thing we got going, and especially when Harden comes here pretty soon.
All right, Brian, I love talking to you, man, and I really appreciate the extended amount of time that you just gave me. I just need 90 seconds more. What do you make of C.J. McCollum saying he hasn't spoken to Zion yet?
Jaw-dropping. And I know J.J. Redick, my colleague at ESPN, who, by the way, is no fan of the Pelicans after the way he was treated. He has no incentive to sugarcoat anything on the Pelicans. Went in on his former teammate Zion today. You should check that out. Just jaw-dropping. And the thing about it is that those of us in the media, we don't know Zion. I've never had the chance to meet him because he is very, very insulated, and he has existed in the NBA mostly in pandemic time or injured. So we don't have reliable reporting on how Zion is actually doing. There's a ton of stuff out there with, dubious sourcing, and so I don't know what to believe. But there's nobody speaking on Zion's behalf, and the team, quite frankly, seems petrified of saying anything. So the fact that C.J. McCollum, who's a $30 million player, who the team just brought in as Zion's running mate, hadn't even spoken to him even on text, was just jaw-dropping. And it also says a lot. I know that a team's public relations or ticket sales staff doesn't determine things, but certain things are clear. The Pelicans sent out their season ticket package promotional material over the weekend, and it didn't have Zion's name even in it because they can't sell him right now. They can't, with a straight face, sell him. He has jaw-dropping talent. I think the world of his ability, but I just think it's fascinating the way decisions are being made around him, and not in a good way.
Brian, you're the man. Thanks for the time. Look for my call. I love our chats. You make me smarter, and it's just always terrific. Thanks for the call.
Be well, Rich. Take care.
You bet. That's Brian Windhorst. I follow him on Twitter. You should as well. Just a dynamite reporter. Dynamite.
Yeah, man.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.